everybody, this is the Wikstrand. So today we are going to take a look at an absolute stone cold classic. It is without a doubt the most famous movie that John Carpenter has made, and also probably his most successful. But the question is, how well does it hold up almost 50 years after its release? My thing with slashers has always been that I don't like slashers. I don't like the idea of, a bunch of horny teenagers getting killed by, some superhuman masked killer or something like that. It has never appealed to me, and it will probably never appeal to me. But as far as slashers go, this is just about as good as it can get, in my opinion. So let's take a look at why this movie is so good, shall we? This is the original Halloween. So we have a small town in Illinois who is going to get an unexpected visitor on Halloween. An old citizen is going to return to his hometown, and he is called Michael Myers. Michael Myers did some horrendous things when he was a small boy and has been institutionalized, on insane asylums for the last 15 years. But he has recently escaped and is heading for his old hometown. And hot on his trail is Dr. Loomis, who has warned about him, and has tried to reach him, but has never been able to, understood what drives Michael Myers and why he is this ferocious evildoer. Is he going to be able to stop Myers before he turns this quaint little town into a slaughterhouse? That's what we're gonna find out. Who is going to live throughout this Halloween, and what is going to be left of this town once Michael Myers is done with them? That is essentially sort of what this movie is about. The arrival of Michael Myers and the threat that he's posing does not mean that much to Laurie, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, because she's more preoccupied with, having to babysit some kids on Halloween instead of, partying with the cool kids. But this doesn't bother her that much. She's a little bit of a, shy girl and a little bit of a nerd, so that is not, a huge problem for her. Now, on paper, this should not work. And as I said, I don't like slashers. I don't like, the boring gore, and I don't like the kills. And most of the characters in these movies are boring and lame, or they are douches. So this should not work. But it does. Why? I think that a lot of praise has to go into the building up phase that this movie has. Seriously, it's gonna be like 2/3 of this movie is just build-up phase before anything actually happens. And they're able to craft out so much tension out of so, simplistic sequences. And who should take credit for creating this fantastic atmosphere? Well, that would certainly be John Carpenter. Not only as a director who was responsible for creating these voyeuristic sequences filled with this eerie atmosphere, but mostly because of his role as a composer. Without his iconic, stress-filled and second greatest horror movie soundtrack of all time, the greatest thing is, of course, Omen when it comes to horror movie soundtracks. But this one is a pretty, close second. Without that soundtrack, this movie would have run the risk of, being a little bit flat. But now we have it, and it is absolutely fantastic. Jamie Lee Curtis' iconic performance as Laurie is of course very good, and Donald Pleasence is also very, very good as Dr. Loomis, but I feel like he's, doesn't have as much screen time as he should have, and the interactions between Laurie and Dr. Loomis is very, very limited, which I think is a misstep, because this movie kind of lacks a little bit of a plot. It is just set up, which then turns into, the murders and the chasings and the gruesome violence, even though it is not that gruesome. I was kind of surprised when I rewatched this movie for the purpose of this review to discover that it isn't, a bloodbath. This isn't, some kind of gore fest or anything like that. It is actually a little bit similar to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that the violence is sort of more in your head than is on the screen. I like that little bit, by the way. This movie could have easily been turned into almost a mythological, fable-like story, but they didn't do that for whatever reason. They chose to do that. This is a very bare-bones story, and I guess that is one of the reasons why this movie works. And as I say, as slashers go, this is about as good as you can get, because Michael Myers is a very, very good antagonist for us. He never runs, he never gets angry, he never says anything. He doesn't have catchphrases or, becomes silly or anything like that. He's just a silent, threatening, killing machine, and that is actually quite scary. I have no patience for silly dreams or going into outer space with Freddy and Jason and stuff like that. I'm not interested in that sort of things. Horror to me should be simple, and it should be made in a way that it could, potentially happen, and this could potentially happen. If you've never seen Halloween, I really recommend this movie. Now, I'm not an expert when it comes to the Halloween movies. I've only seen 3 movies in my entire life. This, Halloween 2, and Halloween Age 20 that came out in 1998. And I have no real interest of seeing anything else, because the rest seems to be a lot of, convoluted nonsense that would, make the X-Men and Terminator franchises, we're easy to follow compared to your silly nonsense. So I don't know whether or not they would make movies that would be almost as good as this one later on, but maybe somebody could, drop me a suggestion in the comments. But as I said, this is a very suspenseful, very eerie horror movie that has a lot more to offer you. Not just the usual horror tropes, but also a lot more is being offered throughout this movie. And as I said, if you've never seen this movie, I really recommend it. I think it holds up perfectly. Things are always happening, despite on the surface nothing is happening. They're able to make a lot out of a little, and I'm always impressed with movies that do things like that. I hate the ending, because what it would lead to, a seemingly endless conveyor belt of increasingly convoluted and lackluster sequels, which I have not that much interest of seeing. But this movie is an absolute stone cold classic. I just wish that this could have been the only movie in the franchise, but considering that, how successful it was, and, how the ending was, made, they almost had to make a sequel to it, which unfortunately wasn't as good. And then, well, some say it fell off a cliff, and some said it, very, very slowly died, and then it picked up at the end. And many people were not happy with the last movie, which have made me even less enthusiastic about seeing them. But I will do that someday, but today is not that day. I think this movie is really, really good. A fantastic soundtrack, good performances, and you do care about the characters. And there is a certain weird little element of presence in this movie. You feel sort of like you are, there. You feel like you are Michael Myers sometimes. You feel like you are, some of the people that are walking around here. You feel like you are present in the story. And that is actually kind of impressive. And as I said, if you've never seen this movie, I really recommend it. And it is maybe one of the greatest slashers I've ever seen. I think Scream is better, but that is mostly due to the fact that it is also a mystery. Who is the killer, and why is the killer doing this thing? Michael Myers is just somebody who wants to kill a lot of people for what it would become increasingly convoluted reasons. But here it is, for a lack of a better term, pure. Halloween has been described as an absolute modern masterpiece and one of the greatest horror movies of all time. This is not my type of a horror movie, and I don't think that it is as good as they say. But I still give this movie 78 points. This is a very, very competently made horror movie with lots of fantastic iconic sequences, with an iconic villain, an iconic first girl, for a lack of a better term, and the amazing soundtrack as the cherry on top. So I'll see you next time from, well, so and so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.